All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started because I know we want to save time for the good stuff. So first and foremost, I'm really overwhelmed by the response to our webinar. This is our first in a series called Ask Email Industries, and well, not only overwhelmed by the people that said they were going to come and looking at the attendees, ever-growing attendee list, I'm incredibly grateful, and I know when I speak for Oscar and LB, they will agree. So I'm Scott Hardigree. I'm the founder and CEO of Email Industries. We're providers of email deliverability consulting services, list hygiene for brands, and have an email compliance tool largely used by email service providers. Let's see, today's conversation should be super interesting. It's kind of in the format of our version of our own radio call-in show, where you'll get to learn initially, but mostly ask questions and in fact try to stump our experts. And looking at our attendees list, there's plenty of experts on there, so this should be fun. So without further ado, please let me introduce LB Blair, our ever brilliant head of deliverability, and one of our most gifted deliverability consultants, Oscar Tekken. LB, take it away.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, let's see here. Yeah. So gonna hit like just a few news updates here. And I'm super keep the questions rolling. Jeff, I see your question. Absolutely gonna answer that. Love that question. And yeah, we're just gonna go anything goes, folks. Any question you want to ask. I mean, if you have a problem with your SPF record or something and you want us to untangle it live, we'll pull up the screen share and we'll do it. But for right now, got a little bit of an update. A lot of this courtesy of spamresource.com. Hit that website up for all the most current deliverability news. Al Iverson, I mean, absolute titan in the industry and knows just a tremendous amount about email deliverability. I got to work with him just briefly and learned so much on a project, and it's so he doing the community a huge service here, and I'm just trying to spread that love. So just need everybody to know, first of all, Microsoft is going to start honoring DMARC equals reject, which means if your marketers check, maybe go scope out your DMARC record, use a nice little tool. There's still the one over on the 250 OK site. There's always MX Toolbox got your back, and an absolute host of others. Just check and make sure IT didn't slide in a nice little DMARC record on your domain, and maybe your marketing platform isn't set up with custom DKIM, or you're not set up for the alignment. Might have a little problem there. I've seen it happen. Unfortunately, IT will roll out a change, not really communicate with all the relevant stakeholders, i.e. marketing, and then whoops, mail starts massively going to the spam filter. And I think we all know, that once mail starts going into spam, it tends to just keep doing that until you correct it. So I think let's see here. I've got a couple others, but Oscar, have you seen any interesting trends just kind of in the data we've been digging through lately?
Well, recently from some of our clients, we noticed that mails going out from Google Workspace are landing in the Outlook spam folder. So that might be a trend to have a look at it, actually, which we solved similar issues in the past as well. So one does not simply is delivering to Outlook for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been seeing that too. Like just, people sending just regular correspondence mail, like to people they've been communicating with on Outlook, and just all of a sudden
exactly.
Office is just not letting you inbox those mails from Google Workspace. It seems like sometimes they have a little bit of beef with each other, like one won't inbox the others. Honestly, the methodology that I have for it is essentially, you got to narrow it down. And at some point, you might have to submit a Google ticket. Inbox placement test can be very helpful. you know, and
Yeah.
and honestly, what I do is I'll do like a limited one, like with just like the mailbox providers that matter, just because, you know, I've seen issues before where if you send to like a whole seed list from your correspondence mail platform as blind carbon copy, like the volume spike will cause, you know, your Outlook might have protocols to shut it down. So I've seen that happen.
Sure.
And yeah, I think the other thing, I didn't personally see any of this, but it does look like Google was feeding back a bunch of what we would call RFC 5322 bounces to kind of minimize DKIM replay attacks. Like, because let's just the hackers, the scammers, the spammers, they're always out there. They're always hungry. They're why the spam
Sure.
filters are always changing, is because of you know, is really just because the email ecosystem, like an immune system, is always trying to adapt to the threats in its environment.
Exactly.
You know,
Yeah, that's
so
true.
it's kind of, yeah, kind of always going to be changing there. But yeah, Oscar, I don't know. I don't think I've seen anything else. I haven't seen any like major, like, oh no, there's a bunch of mail bouncing from this provider or anything like that. Anything
No,
that
I
you've
didn't.
noticed?
No,
All
I
right.
didn't.
Well, let's do this. I'm going to ask you the first question here. Take your pick. We've got Shibra, Subham has Yahoo deliverability challenges. Do you wanna chat about that? You want me to run? I can give you
Sure,
that.
we can start chatting about that one. Actually, that seems
Yeah,
interesting
yeah. All
one.
right, Oscar, I'm gonna serve you up our first question from
Uh-huh.
Shubham, and it says we are always getting challenged with Yahoo deliverability while making all the metrics high, 5 or 6 or 5%, and complaint rate below 0 or 0.05%, so less than half of a tenth of a percent, which is typically the reporting threshold. What else can we do? They're getting TSS 04 bounces,
Yeah,
or
so
other type, or TSS 04 deferrals or bounces. Gotcha. So what advice do you have for our caller today?
Well, definitely, I would like to dig into these data points. Actually, I would like to see if they are on shared IP or not, because we know that Yahoo checks mostly the IP reputation and the domain reputation. So that might be one of the indicators that we need to look at it. If they are on dedicated IP, then probably we'll need to dig further on their IP reputation to see if there were any spike recently, for instance, that might affect their reputation overall and cause some damage there. Yeah, that might be. The complaint rate is great, though. They're keeping it below 0.05. This is great. Apart from that, I would like to have a look at their content as well, because we know that Yahoo is also deciding whether or not to inbox or spam folder in based on the content too. So there are a lot of different data points to check here, because it's not so easy to give a very clear answer. In this case, it requires further investigation for sure. But to start with, I will check if they're on shared IP or dedicated IP. And if they're on shared IP, they can reach out to their email service provider to see if they were listed somewhere or not.
Yeah, that's I would say what I've seen, with the TSS 04 bounces, if your complaint rate is if you're here's the question, I forgot, y'all can't that's a great idea, thank you, Scott. But basically I would say that complaint rate, it's below the reporting threshold at SNDS, it's below the reporting threshold at like Google, even though we're talking about Yahoo, but just basically all to say it's below the typical threshold before we would start even reporting on it, really, like it would trigger a report. What I would say is a big question here is if these are dedicated IPs, you probably just started warm up too fast. Like Yahoo And AOL, that all of those Yahoo managed like infrastructure mailboxes can be really sensitive about just how fast you start mailing. I mean, I would honestly say the ideal, like if you're spinning up new dedicated IPs, is going to be to really like trickle the mail out on like throttle it very heavily. If you can adjust your own throttles, like if you're running a custom MTA, or if you're using a platform that lets you adjust the throttle, the rate at which mail is delivered, that's a great way to start combating this problem. Is just to spread the mail out over a greater amount of time. If that's not an option, what I typically do then is I would look at like one of your higher performing transactional or automated mail streams that has like a reasonably small volume of email, and start with like that first and let that run for a day or two, and then maybe blend in another one. Really try to send your absolute highest engagement traffic from those IPs. So you're putting your best foot forward with Yahoo and AOL. Absolutely. But yeah, I think we got that one. I would say I would love to answer Jeff's question if you want to run that one by us, Oscar.
Go ahead. Yeah, I will. That's an interesting question. Actually, I would like to hear the answer. Jeff is asking, is sender certified mail by validity or surety mail really make a difference with the good senders?
So Jeff, unfortunately, I have to give you the canonical deliverability answer, which is it depends. I'll be very honest. I've seen, and if this is talking about IP certification, I would bet, there's also the political kind of certification. I would assume they probably work somewhat similarly, but what I can say is this: I've seen instances in which certification has made a difference, and I've also seen instances in which it's made absolutely zero difference. I would say, in general, I can't divulge too much, but based on what I know, this is primarily going to help at the Microsoft consumer domains and some ISPs and some smaller ISPs. So it's kind of a little, whether it's worth it or not is going to be a function of a couple of things. One, I've seen it help, especially in cases where brands like maybe like theme parks have really unpredictable volume. Their email volume goes like the roller coasters they operate, right? Like it's got a very, like they're very cyclical because there's times of the year nobody want it, they're freezing, they're up in the north, they're freezing, they don't want to think about hopping on a roller coaster in the middle of January. They're not even thinking about buying those tickets yet. So they have a really low season, but then they have a peak season that very rapidly ramps up. And it seemed like, to me, the certification made that mail traffic a little more digestible, is what seemed to make the difference. But no, if you're a sender with a pretty steady volume of mail, like throughout the year, like everybody spikes up. Well, if you're e-com, a lot of people spike up during, the Black Friday holiday e-commerce feeding frenzy. But I mean, if you don't have any really substantial volume spikes, I'd try to run it on my own. I would try to run without it at first and see what you can achieve. Because if you're, and set up data feeds like SNDS to make sure you're getting all that good data back. The other thing I will say about the sender certified mail is that it does what was I gonna? Yeah, it does get you some good data back too. It actually gets you some more data back. So that can be very valuable too, but it's kind of a question of scale. If you're sending enough to the Microsoft mail providers, and if you're sending enough to some ISPs, it certainly can be, and your volume is like cyclical or changes unpredictably, it certainly can ease the way and just make that one less concern you kind of have to worry about. Great question. What have we got next, Oscar? Let me see what you've. Oh yeah, here we go. I really like this one. Also from Shubham Uprit, different Shubham. Shubham, does changing DMARC records from none to reject increase our delivery on Microsoft?
Well, actually, DMARC is not a tool to pass the spam filters. Well, definitely journey from none to reject is the ultimate goal for DMARC record, but it will not help you to bypass the spam filters. So this is a authentication policy, basically. On the other side, SPF and DKIM, they are authentication protocols. With DMARC implementation, you are simply telling recipient server how to handle if any of those authentications fails. It is definitely good to have, and overall it helps with the spoofing, and it helps you to prevent the spoofing, and in long run, for sure, it will help you with your reputation. But changing directly from none to reject, it will not help you to get better delivery.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's not really, it's not really going to change your mail delivery or inbox placement. I mean, the one thing I can say is having DMARC and passing DMARC, and honestly, even having it at reject, it does show mailbox providers that you're very serious about security, which is something they want to see. So, but I guess what we can't say that on its own is enough to flip the switch and tip the balance between inbox placement and spam placement. So it's like, it on its own, is it going to land you in the inbox, or is it going to get you, even delivered to the mailbox? Can't really say that, but it's certainly still good to have. But it does, there are, I guess there are cases where you could argue the answer is yes, because if you're getting spoofed and you don't have DMARC at all, well, that can certainly cause you to not land in the inbox.
Yeah.
And I've even seen, spoofers, they're hungry out there. I've seen them really operating at scale, spoofing brands with a none policy. So, I mean, if you prevent an active spoofing attempt, that is going to help your delivery. But yeah, on its own, I would say prima facie no. good thought there. I think next up I've got this, if you want to run through this question from Nicole,
Yeah.
I think this is a good one.
Yeah, exactly. So Nicole is asking, well, she's basically saying, I'm on a dedicated IP with high reputation, around 90. However, this is the sender score. However, I recently sent an email out and noticed I didn't land in Yahoo eval inboxes for 2 days after I sent. Have you ever seen this before? I previously had a block from Yahoo, but it was removed, so I'm wondering if that impacted the send.
Gotcha. So I believe it's been a while since I've seen this at Yahoo, but I can definitely say I've seen it at Gmail and other providers as well. If they are hanging on to your mail, that does mean they're probably doing more spam filter processing, which is generally not good for your mail. It's probably going to coincide with a increased spam filter placement, I would say. But I've seen this even from Gmail before, where they delayed a message for like 8 hours. I would say 2 days is probably on the outside of what I've ever seen before. But it means they're really kind of considering it. I will say, if you want to contact me on LinkedIn, I would be super curious to take a look at one of those email headers, because it will kind of, in the headers, we can look and see if you received one of the emails, we can kind of look and see where it spent some of those hops, like whether they held on to it, like kind of how many hops deep they held on to it, I think that would be some interesting information. But the other questions I would kind of have is, did you have like a volume spike, things like that. The other thing I would say is, if you had a block removed from Yahoo, I would definitely go gently Like I would definitely open up back up gently. Like I certainly wouldn't, like, if you're running at 100% volume and then you have a block and then you get the block removed, I would not open back up at 100% volume. I'd start at maybe like 25 or 50% and gradually work my way back up to 100, just because these spam filters are in some ways risk management systems. And I have a bit of a background in IT audit, which is, honestly, this process of just looking for variances, like what is out of the ordinary here, and spikes on the graph look out of the ordinary, and that's how some of these systems can identify risk. So they find a spike on the graph, and then they go to look at it further, and just kind of the more questions the spam filter asks about your mail traffic, the worse things are going to go for you. But yeah, absolutely great question, Nicole. Oscar, do you have any thoughts or anything to add on that?
No,
If you've
that's a
seen
great
it,
answer.
Yahoo kind of really holding on to mail like that. It's been a while since I've seen something like that for sure.
Yeah.
Let me see. Oh my goodness, so many questions. Oscar, what?
That's not
Yeah. Okay. So I think we got. Yeah, I've got Lexi. This is an excellent question. I like it. Yeah. Do the days and times of the week actually matter for deliverability of email campaigns? I've heard certain data indicates that sending days and times don't really matter anymore when it comes to like open and click-through rates, and says, for context, they're a nonprofit using MailChimp to deliver all of their email campaigns. So what do you think about the days and the weeks here?
Well, I think with most of things with email deliverability, and this will I probably also the answer like it depends, because I think what Lexi needs to do here is to really understand their subscriber group, their audience, and send the email based on their needs and based on when they are expected to engage with their emails. So overall, there were some recommendations to send on certain days and hours, but that might not be applicable for everyone basically. So we need to find here a tailored solution to understand basically like when the subscribers are really getting engaged and send the campaigns tailored to each subscriber. Actually, that will be better.
Yeah, I think what Oscar is talking about here kind of is send time optimization, like recipient level send time optimization. I've worked with numerous platforms that have this. They'll kind of, they won't send it like the exact minute. They'll kind of batch the sends into either 5-minute or 15-minute groups. But, they can really deploy the campaign over a period of time based on the recipient's, historical open rates. I will say a pro tip that I kind of have is, a lot of people have automation set to send on the hour. So I think that there can be a little bit of an advantage to sending yours at like a little more random time. So, all that cavalcade of emails comes into somebody's inbox at the top of the hour. And if you send 3 minutes after, you're going to be at the top when they pop in. So I like that trick. But yeah, I think mostly absolutely. It's about knowing your audience and looking at the data. And honestly, the best way to know anything in email, even deliverability, is test it and find out, like design a low risk test that, isn't going to, affect your business or your nonprofit, your fundraising materially. But, and really you only need about, for absolute kind of certain, you really only need about 10,000 recipients per variant. But you get pretty good confidence with just 1,500 recipients per variant as well. And you just want to, test it. Be like, hey, all right, I'll send this deployment out at different times a day and see, I'll send different random segments out at different times a day and see which one does best. There's also, you can distribute the jobs. Some platforms will let you distribute the jobs over the different time zones. So you could say, okay, send at 8 a.m. in every US time zone, or 8:03 in every, so and that spreads the send out, which I find that's the other big benefit of send time optimization, or kind of splitting things up like that, one, you're being more contextual to your recipients and their behavior, and two, you're making your mail traffic more digestible for the mailbox providers, like, because you're letting them make more smaller decisions instead of like less frequent, larger decisions on whether to inbox traffic or not. But no, absolutely, absolutely great question. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was gonna say, uh,
interesting
if we,
one for you here.
yeah, the one from Mary, is that what you're looking
Yeah,
at?
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we gotta, this is yeah, if we want to launch into that, if we can put that on the screen as well, that'd be great, because we've got a fair amount
Yeah,
here, but go ahead and
that's a good.
take it away, Asger. What do we think the
Sure.
core kind of question is here?
Well, it seems like there's a spam complaint issue that affects the deliverability, but let me read the question here. So, yeah, we have a huge deliverability issues, even with the engaged ones. Our metrics for Gmail are typically 25%, that of what we see for the other inboxes. Overall, their deliverability is high. Well, yeah, there's the question. Yeah, deliverability is overall high. They are using custom IO. All the authentications are in place, it seems, DMARC, SPF, and DKIM. They even switched from shared IP to dedicated IP over the last year, but they seem to be continue having the issues. And Google Postmaster do show spam there, but custom IO doesn't report any Gmail spam. Any thoughts on that, LB?
Gotcha. So, so I'll say this. Unfortunately, well, so one, Google, to kind of answer the last question, or the last point first, CIO, it's not that CIO isn't reporting on Gmail spam. Like, it's Gmail doesn't allow that. Like, Gmail does not have a traditional feedback loop like kind of Microsoft and Yahoo and AOL and Comcast have. They won't route any spam complaints to you. They will only report to you through the Google Postmaster Tools UI. Now, if you're sending sufficient volumes of mail, one of the ways to kind of subdivide that further is to work with the Google feedback ID header, but that does require some integration kind of with your ESP, so customer IO in this case, to customize that header, and also let you know what the different variable slots mean. I've worked with this provider, so like the the largest bucket variable slot, the D variable, is going to be, I think, typically for Mailgun, which is what they use by default. Then the next one is probably going to be for customer IO, and then the next one is going to be for your specific account. Yeah, I think that's, if you can get them to subdivide it and even use the A variable slot, the smallest variable nested inside those, you can maybe get a little bit better idea on days that, if you have a complaint rate. But if Google's not showing any kind of complaint rate in Postmaster Tools, that may not be the issue. It could be, it could be content. It could be something they don't like in your content fingerprint. It could be something in the, it could be something they consider to be insecure. It could be a security concern. I would, definitely check all the dashboards in Google Postmaster Tools. Are you getting any delivery errors? Do they say your authentication and your TLS encryption are all on 100%? That is anything getting triggered in the feedback ID? So I would say that is, those are all like important to look at. I think your conclusion is definitely right though. If you're getting like 25% less opens and clicks at Gmail than you are other mailbox providers, there's almost certainly a deliverability problem of some flavor. I mean, it could be demographic differences, because there are significant demographic differences between, the average Gmail user and the average Yahoo or Hotmail user. I would say, or AOL even. There are kind of different demographics that go with that. But I would, yeah, I at this point, I would say you probably need some inbox placement testing to really like narrow that down, and see what is driving the issue there, and like because there is a difference. Well, I'd also be curious to know what your domain reputation is. If your domain is high, then really the majority of your mail should inbox. That's been my experience is, yeah, if your domain rep is high, the majority of the mail should inbox. If the domain rep's not high, that means you're going to get if it's on Medium, you're going to get kind of mixed results. And what that could mean is you have some mail streams that are doing great and others that are not doing as great. So I would look through your metrics and through if you have any automated flows. I would look through, or journeys, or whatever you want to call them. I would look through campaigns, I think is what they call them in CIO. I would look through those and look for any underperformers, if anything's like an outlier, and dig into that. Excellent question. Oscar, what is next on tap for you?
There's another one with the dedicated IP reputation.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Deliver to the new users.
I got you. Yes. This is a follow-up from Subham Agrawal. It says we have dedicated IPs. We were talking about this earlier. I think it was our first question. They have dedicated IPs. The reputation score is also above 95. So for anybody that's already opened, it's delivering. But for new users, they're having like delivery issues, and they would like to know what is the ratio, what kind of should the traffic ratio be for between active and kind of like, I guess, raw or new users.
Yeah, I think this is a good indication to further their deliverability metrics, because if they are inboxing with the already existing engaged users but not getting inbox with the new users, it means that there is something not working, or that their reputation starts decreasing. So I would like to actually check with Shabham if they have Google Postmaster tool, if they set up their authentication properly, or if they did any updates in the authentications that may affect this difference. Or I really would like to see how long they have this issue. For me, it's a bit hard to say the ratio between the active and raw users, but what I would recommend is definitely to investigate further, keep targeting those engaged active users in order to recover that damaged reputation, and definitely do further investigations on the authentication. Maybe check your opt-in process as well, review your welcome flows, those type of things. It will be good to also have a look at the content itself too.
Yeah, 100% what Oscar said. Like, honestly, what I've seen is when you start to have Google reputation issues, typically it starts at what I call like the head and the head and the tail of the dinosaur. If the dinosaur is, a stegosaurus or something, right? My favorite. So but basically what you're seeing, I think what you're seeing could be an early deliverability problem. And I think Oscar nailed it on the head. If you're having trouble reaching new subscribers, really dig into what is that subscriber opt-in process, and use like essentially use make sure you're not getting a high complaint rate on that particular mail stream on the beginning, the early, like what is the first email. And also you got to look at the experience. One thing I've kind of seen, I had like a newsletter client that they kind of launched getting the contacts before they were ready to launch the content. They didn't even have like a welcome email or anything. And it's like, yo, people, we got really short attention spans with our smartphones and like 8011 screens in front of us. Like, you gotta, some people are gonna forget who you are about 5 minutes after you didn't send them a welcome email. So you got to make sure, what's that user experience? Are you hitting them with that welcome email in near to real time after they sign up? Are you setting their expectations? Is that welcome email getting a high rate of opt out? Is that welcome email getting a high rate of spam complaints at other providers, not Gmail, like, Yahoo and Hotmail, essentially, really, because Yahoo and Hotmail and AOL and, Comcast and some others, they'll actually route you your complaints back. So you want to look at, okay, what's the ratio of, how many, Hotmail am I delivering versus how many complaints I'm getting back? Bearing in mind, I don't believe Hotmail routes back 100% of your complaints. So whatever you're seeing in your platform as your complaint rate, it's actually higher. So just bear that in mind. But yeah, that's what I would say, because this looks like it's good that you caught this early and that you've noticed, okay, it's at the beginning of the journey, new people aren't getting in, and that can be super impactful to a business, especially because, typically, I don't think I have to tell most of you marketers out there, there's a cost associated with lead acquisition. Like, these people don't just show up for free. You've got to, you got to put something of value, either invested in content, you invested in maybe marketing to promote the content, you invested in getting these email signups, either e-com, gave them a coupon, whatever. And you really want to, you really want to, baby them a little bit. You want to get them across the finish line. So absolutely, for sure. I think that's a great question, and we're gonna save the questions that we do not get to, and probably we can write. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to do some writing here. I think we might have a few blog posts to do, Oscar. Let's see, is there anything? I think Stephen has a really good question here. If we want to run through that, probably going to be the last one we can hit today, but don't worry. Really appreciate y'all coming out. We're going to do it again. This is a lot of fun. I hope you're all having fun. We might bring some people up on stage. So, submit your questions in advance and let us know if you'd be willing to hop on stage with us sometime, so we can kind of have a little back and forth, but yeah, Oscar, let's hit this one.
Stefan is asking, how do I set up my SPF and DKIM record? And what are the steps to follow to make sure my domain passes SPF, DKIM, and DMARC checks?
This is such a good question. I will say, without knowing the domain, it's a little hard for me to run through an example, but I'll absolutely explain the basic process. So I'm going to skip. SPF is the oldest protocol, and it's honestly, in my opinion, kind of the most complicated, because you're only allowed one record to hold all the SPF, all the IPs that you want to allow to send on behalf of your domain. It's kind of, think of it like, it's like your guest list for like servers and services that are allowed to send email on behalf of whatever domain you put it on. Now, it is unique to either, the parent domain or the subdomain that you set it up on. Each of those will be considered a different SPF, so they don't conflict with each other. But yeah, so it's really SPF, you're going to get the SPF parameter from your ESP, whatever sending platform you're using, or even Google Workspace or anything like that. Google, in Google Workspace, you can go into like the admin panel and collect it there. And then you'll go to your DNS host, which, just bear in mind, this could be different than your web host. Sometimes it's the same, sometimes it's not. It just depends, and it could be different from your registrar as well. I mean, but typically when you buy a domain, your registrar is going to provide you with name servers, domain name servers, which is where you will deploy any authentication, email authentication record. So SPF, you just make it as a text record, and then they know, the systems know it's an SPF record, because it always has to start with V equals SPF1. So for version equals SPF1. And then you do have to, if you onboard a new service, you have to incorporate it into your existing SPF record. So if you have, let's just say, you're using Google Workspace for your correspondence. You got MailChimp for your email marketing and autoresponders. And let's say you also have Zendesk, right, for maybe support tickets. All of those 3 services need to be included and authorized, if you're going to send them all from the parent domain. So sometimes it does require a little bit of expert help to, get that combine correctly. So SPF can be kind of complicated, but in general, there are also a variety of tools out there like MX Toolbox. There's also a really good SPF validation tool over on the old 250OK website that will run, and a variety host of others as well, that will tell you if you're within the limits of what an SPF allows. DKIM is typically, you'll also get that record from your ESP. It is also a text record, and it begins with V = DKIM1, I believe. And you just will get that from the ESP, and again, you'll just paste that in your DNS host as like a text record, whether that's like GoDaddy, DNS Made Easy, Google Domains, wherever you've got your domain name servers pointed. And actually, MX Toolbox will even tell you that. If you do an MX Toolbox lookup, it will tell you where your DNS is hosted. So that'll give you an idea of what platform you need to log into, because it can be a lot to keep track of, like all of that. And then, honestly, to test it, the absolute best, easiest way that I found is to send yourself a Google email. And I'm gonna share my screen here right quick. Let me find a nice marketing email that I've gotten. And let's look here. Actually, I've got, all right, this isn't a marketing email, but this is a I'm gonna share my inbox. Y'all can be aware of my crippling board game addiction. But what you can do is, if you go into the mail in Google, and you have to do this on your desktop, doesn't work on mobile, but you go to this 3 dots menu and you go to show original, it's going to tell you right here in super plain English, SPF, pass, DKIM, pass, DMARC, pass. Awesome. And if we want to be a little more nerdier, we can go down into the headers here, and what you're really looking for is this authentication dash results. And you'll see here, we can actually uncover Board Game Arena. It is using SendGrid, and SendGrid does double DKIM signing. So they've actually DKIM signed it with BoardGameArena.com, and they've also DKIM signed it with SendGrid.info. And they also, you can see the SPF domain has been customized here for EM2295, BoardGameArena.com. It designates that as a permitted sender. And then DMARC here, you can see that their policy is set to reject, and that it's passing. So you can actually, but honestly, if you do this check, you don't have to do the super nerdy check. But yeah, I think that, oh, here's when let me find how to stop my share. That is all the time we have for today, folks. Oscar, thanks so much for joining me on my wacky
it was a pleasure. Always.
Adventures. I hope everybody enjoyed this session of Ask Email Industries. Really sorry for anyone's questions we did not get to. This has been recorded, and we are going to do our best to get it processed and posted to hosting. We'll share it out on like social media. So however you found us to begin with, just check that spot, check our LinkedIn page, and we'll be pushing it out there, along with some little clips and probably snippets, some shorter format video as well, and maybe written content and things like that. I really appreciate everybody showing up and giving us the questions, and it's been an absolute blast.
Thanks a lot.
Hey everyone.